Coming up, the good news about high inflation, especially if you're in the market for an EV or a plug-in hybrid EV, because sure as number twos, something big is coming, and it's going to happen on the 30th of June, and you may not have factored this in to your pre-flight checklist. I'm John Cadogan from Expert.com.au, and I get new cars cheap. Australia only. Website. Card. It's extremely difficult to turn on the box without being assaulted lately by the mainstream mediocrity and its stuttering obsession with high inflation doom and gloom. But I'd suggest it's not all bad news. It's especially not bad news for you if you are seeking to capitalise on the federal government's recent incentivisation for EVs and plug-in hybrid EVs, right? What they've done is they've knocked the FBT, the fringe benefits tax, for 6. You just don't pay it, provided that vehicle is under a price cap and provided you take a novated lease. So what they've done is they've essentially incentivised the purchase of these vehicles for ordinary Australians on salaries and wages, because they're the people who are eligible for this exemption, right? And it's a simple concept, salary sacrifice. That's what it's called, that's what it is, that's what it does, but the granular detail gets complex pretty quickly, and I have a bunch of videos on this. I'll put links to the relevant ones in the description to this video if you are a novated lease newbie. But basically, I wanted to talk to you about this price cap because it's about to change. That's not speculation. It changes every year on the 30th of June. In this tax year, the cap where you can get the FBT exemption is $84,916. So if your vehicle is below $84,916, you're sweet. No FBT. If it's $1 more than that, you're going to pay the full wedge of FBT. So you have to be very careful if you're one of those people who's reasonably affluent on a really good salary and you are looking to maximise the FBT benefit here by paying as much as you can for the best EV you can find beneath the cap. So 84,916 this year. The previous year, it was 79,659. And the year before that, it was 77,565. And the obvious question there is, where do they come up with these seemingly just pulled out of a rabbit's hat random numbers? And the answer is the cap is indexed, like they increase it by the amount of the CPI. In other words, it's inflation adjusted every year. And inflation is running pretty high at the moment, so the increase in the cap for the next year is going to be pretty high. Now, it's not straightforward, this amount, I'd have to say, because it seems straightforward like everything else that the bureaucracy touches, you know. 84,916, okay. But what exactly is in and what exactly is out in the makeup of that number? You need to know. I've done a video on that. It's pretty simple, but not necessarily straightforward. And you have to otherwise Hercule Poirot it with the ATO because they don't really spell it out in a simply accessible way, let's say. I've also done a video on every vehicle that I could find that qualifies by being an EV or a plug-in hybrid under the current cap, okay? And I'll put links to those videos in the description as well. And if you've got questions after that, you can always bail up my commercial partners at novatedleaseaustralia.com.au. I'll put a link in the description for them also. That'll be obligation-free, although I'm sure they'd be overjoyed to help you out with a novated leasing quote if that's what you're in the market for, particularly if you want something competitive, because a lot of novated lease providers are in full grab your ankles and hum Moon River mode right at the moment because these incentives have been a real bonus for them. So you have to insulate yourself against the naked rip-offs that are just floating around with neutral buoyancy in the novated leasing market right at the moment. Now, the bottom line with all of this is, what is the increase going to be? What is the cap after June 30? It's only, 3 months away, so what's it going to be? And according to Forbes on the 29th of March, when they were reporting the ABS data on the CPI, the 12-month rolling averages, okay, the 12 months to December just gone, inflation was 8.4% annually. In the 12 months to January, it was 7.4, and in the 12 months to February just gone, it was 6.8. So if we do something really simple, which is just ballpark the annualised CPI inflation rate for June 30 at 6%, what happens to the 84,916? Well, 1.06 times 84,916 is about 90 grand, because we're only ballparking it, right? And this is kind of interesting to me because there are a great many vehicles or variants of vehicles that are just on the cusp. For example, right, the Ioniq 5. You can get a mid-spec Ioniq 5. They call it the Technic, okay, just under the current cap. But if there's a 6% increase, you'll get the top spec Epic, no problemo, okay, and it's got a heap more kit. You can also only at the moment get the base model shitter Ioniq 6 Dynamic, they call it. The Dynamic is the base model shitter. You can't get the mid-spec Technic without blowing the cap. But after June 30 on the balance of probability, yeah, you'll be able to do that. So I wouldn't be too enthusiastic about jumping between now and the 30th of June if you're in that particular segment of buyers seeking to maximise the amount that you can spend and still get the maximum benefit of zero FBT back from that. Because the difference between about 85 grand and about 90 grand makes a big difference to the actual spec of the EV that you can park in your driveway ultimately. And what I'm saying is, essentially, everyone's cursing high inflation, seemingly, and you might be cursing all over town at the moment because the EV of your dreams might be just a bee's dick over the cap. If you're not from around here, that's a metric unit of infinitesimally small measurement. But that's not going to be the case after the 30th of June. In fact, if you wait about 80 sleeps, the high-tech miracle of indexation of that number is going to turn your frown upside down.